Dark Magician and Gaia the Fierce Knight. It all began with these two cards, which of course should be very familiar to fans of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Media franchise. The first booster pack in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Official card game, Volume 1, was released in Japan on February 4th, 1999. When the game first debuted, it was played with a rule set called the Official Rules. These rules will shock you, being completely different from the rules played in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game today. The official rules are intriguing to say the least. Most notably, monsters could be immediately summoned to the field regardless of level. In other words, tribute summoning did not exist. Cards like Dark Magician, Gaia the Fierce Knight, and later, Blue Eyes White Dragon utterly dominated as a result, and were virtually unstoppable if the opposing player did not have Dark Hole, Raigeki, Trap Hole, or some other sort of powerful monster removal in their deck. That's not the only major difference from today's rules. Only one spell or trap card could be activated or set per turn. One benefit to this, at least around the time of Volume 1's release, is that it sort of balances out the fact that monsters did not need to be tributed. However, this is arguable. In addition, spell cards could not be activated during an opponent's turn, meaning that quick effect spell cards were not possible. However, the first card introduced that could be activated as a quick effect was Karibo, introduced in the Volume 7 booster pack in March 2000, very shortly before these rules were abolished. As such, this rule wasn't particularly important. Players did not draw a card on their first turn under these rules, and only monsters on the field could be fused. There was no hand size limit. This rule set also introduced an infamous rule that nobody followed, called the Anti-Rule. Under this rule, both players were to, without looking at it, draw a card after initially shuffling their deck and then set it aside. The winner would get to take both cards. If a player were to dip below 40 cards after setting aside a card, they must add a card from their side deck and reshuffle. It's pretty obvious why this rule was unpopular. Aside from the legal and ethical issues, players simply didn't want to risk losing a precious card. Japanese players from these days say that they've never seen anybody actually abide by this rule. Official tournaments didn't adopt this rule, and even when they did, they used a substitute such as a star chip. Eventually, this rule was quietly removed from the game. There are a few other minor differences from the rules introduced later, but these are the most interesting ones. The official rules were designed to ease players into the game. They were more similar to the rules presented in the anime and the manga at the time. I often hear people mention that the Duelist Kingdom arc of the anime and the corresponding and preceding arcs in the manga did not follow the rules of the card game. However, the official rules did attempt to emulate these rules somewhat, at least originally. As you can imagine, high-level monsters completely dominated the meta with these rules in place. But what high-level monsters were available? Let's take a look and see what the first ever Yu-Gi-Oh! OCG Booster Pack, Volume 1, had to offer. As I mentioned earlier, it all began with two cards, Dark Magician and Gaia the Fierce Knight. These were the two ultra rares in the set. These cards were so much better than the other available monsters at this time that it's almost comical. The next strongest monster was the Tatsumi Giant, known in Japan as simply Cyclops, Mammoth Graveyard, and Silver Fang. With 1200 attack, these cards have over 1000 less attack than Dark Magician and Gaia the Fierce Knight. The other monsters in this set are pitifully weak, with 600, 700, and 800 attack point monsters being the norm. However, the existence of Dark Magician and Gaia the Fierce Knight wasn't actually all that game-breaking. For one thing, these two cards were ultra rares, which means you had to be very lucky to even get a single one. In addition, the three super rares in this set were more than powerful enough to deal with those two, those super rares being Fissure, Dark Hole, and Trap Hole, three cards which remained staples in the game for well over a decade, when they weren't banned or limited. A smart player would hold on to one of these three so that they can easily rid of their opponent's pesky 2000 plus attack monster. Interestingly, Trap Hole was the only trap card in the entire set. The only other two normal spell cards that this set introduced were Sparks, pretty useless, but not as useless with such a limited card pool, and Red Medicine, which was actually pretty decent at the time due to the average monster having such low attack that 500 life points actually made a bit of a difference. Besides normal monsters, a single trap card, and 4 normal spell cards, equip spells were the only other type of card introduced in this set, with 5 of them making up the obtainable rares. Again, these cards may seem laughably weak now, but 300 points actually made a huge difference in a meta where having a monster with 800 attack on the field was a normal occurrence. I put together a deck using what is available in Volume 1. This is pretty much the most optimal deck you can have. However, I want to stress that the average player would not have been able to have a deck like this. I can't even imagine how much money this would have cost to build. Keep in mind that dedicated card stores were rare, and it would not be easy to buy a single card. I guarantee that almost nobody was running a deck like this. Another strategy you can use to build a Volume 1 deck is to focus on having one type of common monster and including the appropriate equip cards. I simply use the monsters with the highest attack as filler, in addition to the obligatory Dark Magician and Gaia. I included Sparks for the hell of it. I hope to eventually have a video series in which I and another duelist can attempt a match under these rules and with this card pool. Although the cards seem quite weak, I think the duels can end up being fun to watch or at least mildly interesting, at least from a historical perspective. On February 21st, Konami held a tournament to help support the Game Boy game Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters. As far as I'm aware, this tournament was divided into two sections, one in which the physical card game was played and one in which the Game Boy game was played. This is one of the few tournaments in which I can't find any information about the winner or what decks were played. If anyone has any idea, please let me know. If there are Japanese viewers out there, it's possible that this information may be printed in a magazine such as Shonen Jump. It would be extremely interesting to find out what decks people were using back when the card pool was so limited. As a tournament prize, Konami gave a copy of Kanan the Sword's Mistress to each attendee. This card, being the third strongest monster at the time, 1400 attack, was a good addition to any deck. This card remained extremely rare for many years and is a bit legendary among the old school fans of the OCG. The next release came on March 1st, 1999, called Booster 1. Boosters were different from the volume packs in that they were sold in vending machines and usually featured more reprints. Man, talk about disappointing. This set is worse than Volume 1 in almost every way. It included only rares and commons and didn't introduce any new card types, featuring only normal monsters, normal spells, and equipped spells. Man, what did Konami have against trap cards during this time? The strongest normal monsters in this set are Watt Kid and Ryu Kaishin, both with measly 1000 attack. Pathetic. By the way, Ryu Kaishin is called Gargoyle in Japanese. Ryu Kaishin roughly translates to Fierce Dragon God. This doesn't seem fitting at all. Even the English card text references it being a gargoyle. Whatever. Anyone who started with this set is at a severe disadvantage against those who started with Volume 1. The 5 rares are simply reprints of the equipped spells from Volume 1. This set introduces 2 normal spells, Blue Medicine, a worse version of Red Medicine, and Raimei, a slightly better version of Sparks. My optimal deck of this set would be very similar, and only slightly upgraded. I guess I'll pretend that I could somehow obtain 3 Kanans. 5 days later, on March 6th, 1999, Konami released Starter Box, theatrical release, on the same day that Yu-Gi-Oh! The movie premiered in Japan. This box changed everything. 3 words, Blue Eyes White Dragon. Or is that 4? Blue Eyes not only had a whopping 3000 attack, it was included in every box. Every box contained the same 50 cards. That means you didn't have to be extremely lucky to have access to a high-level monster. And if you were a rich enough brat, you could have 3 of them. Fun fact, Blue Eyes is still the strongest normal monster in the game to date. The set also introduced fusion monsters and field spells. We also got 2 new trap cards finally, with one of them being the first continuous trap. Funnily enough, I always figured that field spells were introduced as a way to simulate the field effects from the Duelist Kingdom arc, but this isn't actually the case. Now, everyone knows that fusion monsters were terrible in the early days, but they must have been better back then, right? Nope. Flame Swordsman is passable, I guess, but still not worth it, especially with Blue Eyes being available. The 2 trap cards introduced are Dragon Capture Jar and 2-Pronged Attack. Dragon Capture Jar is obviously designed as a way to out Blue Eyes, and I'm pretty sure 2-Pronged Attack is too. Konami's early attention for the game seemed to involve balancing strong monsters by providing the players with powerful spells and traps. Here's the thing about Dragon Capture Jar though. It switches and locks all Dragon-type monsters to defense position. Well, look at Blue Eyes' defense. It's 2500. That's equal to the second strongest monster's attack, Dark Magician, which means that it can't be destroyed by any other monster without the use of equip cards or field spells. You can't even use another Blue Eyes because Dragon Capture Jar affects all monsters on the field. However, it still works as a stall tactic until you manage to draw a Raigeki or a Dark Hole. Oh, by the way, Raigeki debuted in this set as a super rare. Alongside Blue Eyes, the set also introduced Aquamador with 2000 defense points, an effective wall. The theatrical release of the starter box was sold, as far as I'm aware, at the movies to people seeing the Yu-Gi-Oh! Film. On March 18th, the starter box received a more widespread release. 5 cards were exchanged for different ones in this set, including Aquamador. Konami offered Celtic Guardian as a bonus to anyone who pre-ordered. With 1400 attack, it's tied with Kanan the Sword's Mistress. Here's my optimal deck up to this point. Again, it's very improbable that anyone played a deck like this at the time. Volume 2 came out a little over a week later on March 27th. Our 2 ultra rares this time are Curse of Dragon and Swords of Revealing Light, 2 excellent cards. Curse of Dragon with its 2000 attack featured the 4th highest attack of any monster, and Swords of Revealing Light prevents your opponent from attacking for 3 turns, almost functioning as a draw 3 card. As for our super rares, we've got Mystical Elf. Its 2000 defense is a game changer, and almost certainly is featured in the set as a way to balance out Curse of Dragon. You may have noticed an interesting trend. For every powerful card introduced, Konami attempted to balance it by offering a counter, usually at a lower rarity. We've also got Final Flame, continuing the trend of introducing a burn damage card slightly more powerful than the last, and Monster Reborn, another legendary card that would eventually see itself limited and banned. Our rares are, once again, a bunch of equip cards. We've also got a few notable commons, including Dispel, which is obviously intended as an out to Swords of Revealing Light, and Urabi. Urabi, with its 1500 attack, takes the place of 5th highest attack, thus ending Kanan and Celtic Guardian's time in the limelight. It was nice of Konami to throw us a dinosaur bone by including Urabi as a common, because at this point, those with rare cards will truly have an edge in every duel, a sentiment that Kaiba himself often expressed, and correctly so. By the way, there are no trap cards in this set. I don't know why they printed so few of them back then. As always, I built a deck using the card pool up to this point. Feel free to pause to take a look. There were no new releases for over a month. Konami held the second official Yu-Gi-Oh! Tournament in April and featured Aquamador as a promotional card. Just like last time, information on this tournament is scarce. I've been scouring old Japanese websites on Wayback Machine, but haven't found any deck lists or information on the winner yet. Let me know if you can find anything. At this point, it's clear that the game is fundamentally flawed. The game pretty much comes down to being the person to draw the strongest monsters and the best spells first. There's absolutely no reason to play weak monsters or to play fusion monsters. We can see that Konami attempted to balance strong monsters and spells with various counters, but how well does this really work? As I mentioned, not everyone had access to the ultra rare cards and such, but still, how long could the game last like this? The game could not continue under these rules. And so, it didn't. On May 5th, Konami released the official guide starter book, and alongside it, a new rule set called the Expert Rules, which changed the game forever and ensured its longevity. I'll discuss this new rule set and the rest of the 1999 releases in the next episode. I hope you enjoyed this. Please comment and let me know if you'd like to see more. I really enjoyed making this video, and I hope to make more historical videos on the Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game. Not only do I hope to continue this series, I also have ideas for other topics. Until next time.